With gas prices being so high this year, hybrids have become all the rage. And for Lexus, they're taking full advantage of this. They have a wide selection of hybrid models in the lineup, going from the Lexus UX to the brand new Lexus ES. And then for their best-selling model, it's really great here because you have a hybrid and plug-in hybrid variant at a relatively affordable price point. This week I've had the opportunity to live with the Lexus NX 350h I'm sitting next to for the last week or so. And I gotta be honest, I see the appeal, I get it, but I'm still confused like everyone else. Is this crossover a luxury compact or a luxury subcompact? Because its exterior dimensions are similar to a BMW X1, Audi Q3, but its price point is a BMW X3, Audi Q5. Well, this was one question I wanted answered this week, and hopefully we find out today in this video. So we're going to take a deep dive into what the Lexus NX 350h has to offer. So we're going to check out the exterior, the interior, take it out for a test drive, give you guys my thoughts on this vehicle after a week, and see why the Lexus NX 350 right now, because of high gas prices, might be one of your best choices, even though it is one of the older models in this segment. So as always, let's begin with that pricing. For the 2026 Lexus NX 350h we're taking a look at today, this is the F Sport, coming in at right around $56,000. We do have about $4,000 worth of add-ons though, which will give us an end cost of $60 grand, which is very expensive for a crossover of this size. I would push you in the premium direction, to be quite honest, because that will be right around $50,000. And I think if you're someone trying to save some money and maximize that fuel range, the premium will make sense. And if you take a look at the features the premium offers, more than enough, more than adequate for what this vehicle is supposed to be offering. On the higher end though, with the F Sport, I'm still going to tell you to buy that full gas-powered model. The full gas-powered model, you're going to save about $3,000 there, and it will be more fun because that Turbo 4 will pair up very well with, one, the transmission, but also the suspension that we have here out of the F Sport, even for the hybrid model, because we have adaptive dampers, and we're going to talk about that during the test drive because this vehicle is somewhat hot hatch-like in its demeanor and also in its design. Believe it or not, the NX is built on the same platform as the Toyota RAV4, which can be seen as a huge positive for this crossover in certain markets, because on the lower end, you're getting a crossover that's around the same size as a subcompact luxury crossover, but you're getting the refinement of a more stiffened chassis, where other crossovers in this segment, such as a BMW X1, Audi Q3, are not going to give you that type of refinement. On the flip side though, when you get to around $60,000, this is where the NX does suffer a bit because it is smaller than the BMW X3 and Audi Q5. That is something we're going to be talking a lot about here later on in this video. However, with this vehicle having a hot hatch-like appearance, it benefits by having this aggressive design that's going to draw in people who want a sedan, that want like a hatchback, but still have to buy a crossover for practicality purposes. And it begins up front. So you are going to receive full LED headlights and LED daytime running lights in that L-shaped design, that signature look that we have grown accustomed to seeing from Lexus over the past decade or so. But with this being the F Sport model, we're also going to have a defined look here. The aggressive gloss black grille, the gloss black accents along the side of the front fascia, and we will have fog lights for better visibility at night or in adverse weather conditions. This gloss black grille really draws your attention and in some ways makes the NX kind of appear like the Lexus IS, and that's one thing I really do like here about this vehicle. Very sedan-like in its appearance. And for the lower portion of the front bumper, we're going to have this brushed aluminum look here, so no plastic cladding up front, no cheap appearance for this vehicle in any way, shape, or form. And as you make your way over to the side profile, this is where, at least on paper, some people might be a bit concerned. You are going to receive 21-inch gloss black alloy wheels. Now, at 21-inch wheels for a vehicle of this size, that could create a lot more road noise. That could create some harshness to the overall ride quality. But we have adaptive suspension, so that might not be too much of an issue here. And like we always do with these vehicles, we will test out the decibel meter on our fuel economy run with this crossover. So stay tuned for that video coming very soon. What I also like too is that we do have a full paint finish for the wheel arches, giving us that luxury look here that some crossovers in this market are not going to offer. But you are going to find some cladding along the side profile. With this being the F Sport model, you're going to have gloss black side mirror caps with turn signal indicators to go along with blind spot detection for added safety. And you will have gloss black roof rails giving you a two-tone look for the exterior, which is really nice. Then as you make your way around to the back, you're going to find full LED taillights here, matching what you have up front, giving you a modern appearance. But one thing I do like here is that this crossover isn't boxy. You're going to notice that with the C-pillars, the way in which it slopes downward, giving you a sportier appearance, much like we saw out of the first generation many years ago. For the lower portion of the rear bumper, you're going to notice some cladding right here, so that way you can at least deflect some of the road salt and debris during the winter, and we're still going to have the brushed aluminum look for the rear fascia, giving us some symmetry to the overall appearance for this model. And then, of course, with this being a hybrid, you are not going to have visible exhaust outlets from most angles, but they are tucked beneath the bumper for that cleaner appearance. Powering this Lexus NX 350h is going to be a 2.5-liter four-cylinder engine and dual electric motors to produce a max output of 240 horsepower, and unfortunately it is paired with an eCVT. So with that, 0 to 60 times come in above 7 seconds. But for a lot of you looking at buying a hybrid out of Lexus, it's all about the efficiency, and we'll get into those numbers in a minute. Because if you want to go with the full gas-powered version, for one, it's going to be a bit more fun to drive. Almost 317 pound-feet of torque, and a traditional automatic, giving you a 0 to 60 time around 6.5 seconds. So a bit more fun, especially with the F-Sport model. However, much like we see with the full gas-powered version, we have the adaptive dampers, and this vehicle can be somewhat nimble in the corners, making it an economical and efficient vehicle, and also at the same time rather frisky, and I think you can get yourself into trouble with this crossover, but that's just my take here. But it really comes down to the overall efficiency. With our model having all-wheel drive, which will be suitable for people up here in New England like myself, your fuel economy comes in at right around 41 miles per gallon in the city and 37 miles per gallon on the highway. During my week so far with the Lexus NX 350h, I've seen a combined average of around 38.5 miles per gallon. The only downside here is that with this engine, Lexus does recommend using 91 octane. So you're still going to be paying a lot of money at the pump, but that range is probably more importantly, so that way you're not filling up more than once a week if you are traveling into the city or suburbs for work. Hopping inside this Lexus NX 350h, you're first going to notice that the interior is quite snug. For a vehicle being built on the RAV4 platform, you would expect the same interior dimensions, and that is far from being the case. In fact, this would be very similar to, say, a BMW X1 or Audi Q3, and we're going to find that out with the second row and overall cargo space. For those of you looking for a hybrid such as this, the Lexus NX is your only option in the subcompact and compact luxury markets at the moment. So this is where this vehicle is somewhat flexible, but you're also kind of paying the price in terms of overall practicality. However, by going with the F-Sport trim, you're going to have a sportier vibe to this model, and it begins with the seats. You're going to receive power adjustable, heated and ventilated new look seats, which is a leatherette seat material for both the driver and passenger, with the driver's side having 3-position memory for added convenience. Also, with this being the F-Sport, we have sport seats, and they wrap around you. There's a good amount of bolstering and support. Theoretically, you could have some fun on a winding backward. We'll talk about that during the test drive, because even though this is a hybrid, it is somewhat maneuverable and agile, more surprisingly. Also, you're going to notice the F-Sport badge being stamped on the headrest of the seats, giving you a bit more definition to this model and overall interior design. Personally, I would go with a two-tone look, though, with the red accents, since this is a sportier vehicle. But I definitely understand going for that lower profile appearance. In front of you is going to be a heated leather wrapped steering wheel. It feels really nice in the hands, by the way. Aggressive 10-2 and firm 9-3 grips, and we have aluminum paddle shifters. Now that shouldn't be necessary for a vehicle with an eCVT, but one thing I have learned during this week with the NX 350 is that if you downshift, you get instant torque. So you can pass slower drivers on the highway, and most likely if you're going to be using this as a commuter vehicle and you drive in the city and suburbs, you can pass that cyclist, which is really great here. Also in front of you is going to be a head-up display with traffic sign recognition, a digital speedometer, but it's also more in-depth than any other head-up display found in this market. And this kind of begins where I don't like the ergonomics of the Lexus NX. So you're going to notice these arrows on both sides of the steering wheel. And when you hover over them, now you're going to notice your head-up display position, but then also the display for your digital gauge cluster. So instead of having everything show up on the digital gauge cluster, it's going to be showing up on your head-up display. And in some ways, this digital gauge cluster is very simplified. and I wish it was a bit more in depth, and I wish that I wasn't seeing all that on the head-up display. And I don't know if you guys can see this from what I'm capturing for the B-roll, but it's just a bit too confusing. And also, I wish we had physical buttons as well, rather than just a haptic feedback design here. This is where I think it all goes wrong for the Lexus NX, and hopefully this is fixed for future models in the product line. But from here, you will be able to access your adaptive cruise control, your lane centering, and also your follow distance meter, which one thing I'm going to talk about in a later video is that with that follow distance control, it also functions when you're outside of adaptive cruise control, believe it or not. So even if you are cruising in the city and suburbs, it will slow you down if you're tailgating someone. That's actually pretty cool to see here in this vehicle. Now, taking a look at this infotainment system, again, this is where the ergonomics I'm just not a huge fan of. But first off, we are going to have wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto compatibility to go along with onboard navigation. Our model has the optional Mark Levinson surround sound system, which is around $1,000. I kind of bypassed this at around $59,000 because then you're saving some money here and there. There are some features in this vehicle that I actually wouldn't spec out for this NX 350 F Sport, but maybe some of you will disagree on that one. With this being similar technology to Toyota, you're going to notice on the left side of the screen will be quick access icons for your wireless phone connectivity, then of course your navigation system, your radio, your Bluetooth, and then you have your vehicle settings. And really for the vehicle settings, it's far more in depth than what you are going to find out of most Toyota products. So you're going to notice your seat controls, but then driving assistance features, trip information, energy flow, all-wheel drive, tire pressure monitoring system, and vehicle alert. For those of you who are wondering, how do I clear the trip computer so that way I can see what my MPGs are for another drive, you can just go through this infotainment system and clear the data. Then the last thing here is going to be your general settings for personal info, Bluetooth and devices, general notifications, Wi-Fi. It's all right here. At the bottom of the screen will be your access icons for your dual zone climate control up front, your AC, front and rear defrosters, fan speed, fan direction. One thing I do like here is that you are going to have dials, so that way you can at least adjust the dual zone climate control to your liking. There will be a physical volume knob as well, and physical buttons for the front and rear defrosters. Then one last thing here with the infotainment system, which is a little bit different than most Toyota products, is that you will have another sub menu that pops up, and from here you can easily access menus and features that you use all the time, such as your head-up display, your lane departure warning system. It's also from here where you will be able to adjust your driving assistance features and really things that make it a little bit more easier to use on a daily basis. It's mostly all your safety systems, but I like seeing that here so that way you're not looking at screens for too long. Then when placing our NX in reverse, surprisingly, we do not have a top view camera at $60,000. I'm really surprised that we don't have that equipped on this model, even for standard equipment. We are going to have a rear backup camera with trajectory and a multi-angle view, and then we also have front and rear parking sensors so that way you don't back into the car behind you. But I'd like to see a bit more camera angles for this model moving forward. Continuing on towards the center console, first off, I like the soft touch padding here, so if you are going to rest your leg, it's not going to be too much of an inconvenience or a hassle. You have a USB-C and USB-A outlet, a wireless phone charging pad, and you are going to have your drive mode selector. So from here, you can go as Sport, Sport Plus, then Eco, and Normal and Custom. So you're going to have some fun here with this vehicle, and also, of course, you can maximize that fuel range. You're going to find two cup holders, and then next that is going to be your gear shifter, which is very manual-like, because you slide over to the left and down for drive, over to the left and up for reverse, and then down for sport, which is kind of cool here. It gives you a bit more of an analog feel to this vehicle, even though it is very tech focused. And from here, you're going to find more buttons for your auto vehicle hold, your traction control on and off, electronic parking brake, and EV mode. This isn't a plug-in hybrid, so you're not going to have full electric range, but you'll be able to at least maximize the fuel range out of this vehicle in EV mode. And usually you can get into EV mode rather simply if you just let off the throttle. Then for the standard storage compartment, enough room for some smaller items. It's deep enough for, say, a couple smartphones, wallets, or other tech gadgets. And then to round out the front seating area, above will be a panoramic moonroof, which brings in a lot of natural light to the interior. That is also optional. And one thing I like here for our model, we have a digital rear view mirror giving us great visibility when we are on the highway and there might be people in your blind spots. Moving on to the second row, this is where, at least on paper, the Lexus NX begins to struggle in terms of overall practicality, because you're looking at right around 36 inches of legroom. That would fall right in line with many subcompact crossovers, like a Volvo XC40, that Acura ADX we just hopped out of a week ago, and of course the Audi Q3. Within this particular market and price range at $60,000, you're going head-to-head with the BMW X3, Audi Q5, Mercedes-Benz GLC. And interior feels very similar to, say, an Alfa Romeo Stelvio in that regard. So not as practical, but I gotta be honest here, I think those numbers are a bit deceptive because there is enough legroom here. I've adjusted this seat a little further back and I don't feel cramped or claustrophobic. Also, a good amount of headroom as well, even with the panoramic moonroof. So I don't think taller passengers will be hitting their head on the headliner. And in true Toyota fashion, they lowered the second row seats a bit to maximize that headroom. So I actually think that for an average sized family, it can work. It's just that for those of you looking for the best practicality overall, more specifically the cargo space, you're going to want to go with that Lexus RX, or maybe possibly stick with Toyota with that RAV4. Personally, I do think you can squeeze a third person in the center. The center hump isn't that aggressive, and shoulder room is somewhat abundant here, so I don't think people will be fighting for that elbow room. Also back here, you will find two center-mounted air vents to go along with buttons for your 3-level heated outboard seats, which is pretty nice here. Two USB-C outlets, and also a 12-volt outlet. That's kind of rare to see today in 2026. And then to round out the second row seating area, you are going to receive a center armrest with two cup holders. Returning to the rear fascia to take a look at the cargo area for this Lexus NX 350h, you are going to receive a power liftgate, and you better receive a power liftgate at $60,000. And behind the second row seats, you're looking at right on 22.7 cubic feet of room. And this is where the NX struggles mightily, because you're comparing this to a vehicle like a BMW X3 at 30 cubic feet of room, or like an Audi Q5, Mercedes-Benz GLC. These numbers right here would be right in line with, say, an Acura ADX, a Audi Q3, BMW X1. In fact, the X1 might be a bit more practical for this current generation from BMW. And this is where in some ways it's more of a hot hatch, or a lifted hot hatch. In some ways, it's also going to give you the efficiency that you're desiring. But at 22.7 cubic feet of room, I was able to fit all the camera gear that I needed today. And if I wanted to, I could go grocery shopping as well with this particular vehicle. So I wouldn't complain in that regard. It's just that if you're looking for a vehicle that is a bit more practical, like I said before, either look at a RAV4 or maybe go with a Lexus RX. On the left side of the cargo area will be some netting for some smaller items, maybe a couple water bottles, car detail equipment, or maybe even a first aid kit. Then when you lower the second row seat, you're looking at right on 46 cubic feet of room. Once again, nowhere close to being class leading in this market. Wouldn't be even class leading in the subcompact crossover market either. So again, something to think about here out of the Lexus NX. No matter what market you think the Lexus NX competes in, Car and Driver says luxury subcompact, Motor Trend says luxury compact, Lexus has built a vehicle that has cornered the market between $40,000 and $60,000. Not only is it one of the most popular vehicles you can buy in either segment, but it's also very well rounded with hybrid and plug-in hybrid powertrains that no other manufacturer in this price range and class is going to provide. BMW, Audi, and Mercedes-Benz aren't really giving you plug-in hybrid or hybrid technology right now, aside from mild hybrid systems. And you're not going to get anything in terms of hybrid and plug-in hybrid out of the smaller subcompact luxury vehicles. So the NX is kind of in a league of its own. But it's also one of the older vehicles in either class, where this generation is built on an older Toyota RAV4 platform. And you can kind of feel that, even though there's not a lot of physical buttons and it does feel very tech focused. There's also a sense of an analog and old school driving experience where this almost feels like hydraulic steering at times, where it's not as numb and sedated. It does have some feedback that you typically wouldn't associate with a crossover in this market. Obviously, some of that does have to do with the S-Sport trim, with the adaptive dampers, adaptive suspension. But still, though, this is a vehicle that's not going to lull you to sleep, even as a hybrid. The only downside here is that we have an eCVT. And the eCVT reins you back in, reminding you that it is an efficient vehicle and that even though you want to have some fun, you have to be responsible. You want to maximize that fuel range. But it's great to know that while maximizing that fuel range, you can have some fun too. Now, as you can tell, and we talked about this before with the steering wheel, you have aluminum paddle shifters, and you start thinking to yourself, why is this even here? Why do we have aluminum paddle shifters? Well, it's mostly because you have instant torque when you downshift. So down in fourth gear, simulated fourth gear, third gear, and there's no upshift. And I had to laugh at, there's no upshifting with this vehicle. However, with that instant torque, you're going to be able to pass slower drivers, but also what I've noticed too, especially living out in the suburbs, if there's a cyclist, I can get by them very quickly. And that's really where the power band is. That's its strongest in mid-range at around 30 to 50 miles an hour. When you're getting on the highway, it is slow, it is lethargic, it's not very responsive. 0 to 60 times come in at around 7 seconds. So you're going to be sitting there with your leg pinned to the floor and it's just not going to go anywhere. But where this vehicle is at home is in the city, in the suburbs, and giving you a refined driving experience that I've actually really enjoyed during this week. Sure, I would not go with the hybrid personally. I don't really care about maximizing my range. I'd probably go with the full gas-powered model with that 2.4 liter turbo, 275 horsepower, 317 pound-feet of torque. But even with this hybrid, it's given me enough where I can at least stay engaged. And that's really all I can ask for out of an efficient vehicle such as this. Regardless of whether you're in eco, normal, or sport, the Lexus NX provides crisp and confident handling. Where on a winding back road such as this, it sometimes feels flat in the corners. And I wish I could find some better roads because I'd like to see what this crossover can do. What is the limits of this chassis? Because I have driven this crossover quite a bit this week and it's really fun. And at times I can kind of get carried away, which you don't really think about out of a hybrid. But this vehicle is so dialed in that it's almost engaging all the time. However, there is downsides to this. Driving the Lexus NX, it feels comparable to an Audi Q3. It feels comparable to a BMW X1, although I think the X1 now is a bit bigger for the interior. So it's not a true RAV4 replacement or a RAV4 upgrade. This is a crossover that is a tweener. That its pricing on the lower end makes it compelling compared to a BMW X3 and Audi Q5, but its size isn't comparable to a compact. And that's where I think some buyers get turned off by the NX, which I don't think Lexus really cares because they're going to win either way. They'll get you on the lower end with the NX or they'll get you out of a full-size vehicle like the RX for this particular price point. And then obviously you have the TX if you want 3 rows. So Lexus kind of has covered their bases. It's just that at this particular price point, at 60 grand, it's a bit baffling because yes, it boils down to the efficiency, but does efficiency alone translate to sales? Does it translate to buyers saying, I want something that's well-rounded and I want a vehicle that's practical, but this isn't it? And so they're forced to go with the RX. Right now, currently looking at gas prices where they're at, the NX now makes more sense than ever. It's just that because it's old, you feel that. You feel its age. You feel the age of this platform. You feel the age of the interior. And that's where I think we're starting to see the slowdown in popularity out of the NX. There are newer rivals in this market that are undercutting the NX now. And sure, they're not going to be hybrid or plug-in hybrid, but they're offering a better value proposition. And at some point, we're going to have to see the NX get remade, redone, similar to what we are seeing out of the ES. And maybe we get a better value proposition because right now it's not necessarily making sense out of the F Sport. But for the premium, like I said before, the premium at $50,000, you're getting a lot to work with and you're getting a crossover that feels a bit more refined than most subcompact luxury crossovers because this is built on a bigger platform. Whereas most crossovers at around $50,000 are built on subcompact frames. So this is really where the NX has a competitive advantage. And I think that if you're someone who's looking for that, you want the fuel efficiency, the NX is going to be your primary option and your only option. It's just that there are downsides and drawbacks to this particular model where taking a look at other vehicles would make more sense. For those of you sitting back thinking to yourself, all right, it's time to shut up about the sports tune driving experience. What about the on-road comfort? What about the seating comfort? What about the ride quality? Because it is a Lexus after all. Well, let's begin with the seats. I want to start off with the good stuff. The seats are fantastic. They're plush, they're supportive, they hug you. I feel as one with the chassis. Ride quality wise, it's a bit stiff. It is a bit stiff. And even with the adaptive dampers, even in eco mode, you go over the bumps and you feel them. It translates for the interior. And that's where I think the RX is going to have this crossover beat in the lineup. The RX is going to give you a much more refined and comfortable driving experience than what we have here out of this subcompact or compact crossover, whatever you want to consider it as. In terms of interior insulation, we'll have to do a more scientific experiment later on in the week. It's still quiet. It feels very well insulated and a bit more isolated as well. So you're not hearing the outside world as much out of this vehicle. So I think a lot of you are going to appreciate that. And for weekday commutes, city and suburban driving, it does the job. It really truly does. You can tool around in the city and suburbs. It's maneuverable. It can get out of its own way. And I think that's really all you could ask for here. I mean, it's hitting the intangibles, not all of them, but it's checking off enough boxes where this crossover makes sense. And I fully understand why so many people have purchased the NX over other luxury subcompacts and compacts, because it does undercut them. But what we have here out of the NX as a daily driver, as a luxury subcompact or compact, is a great well-rounded vehicle that even today is still a great value. It's just that when you start taking a look at the pricing, especially for the hybrid and plug-in hybrid, can that be justified? And during my week, I'm not quite sure, especially at around $60,000, which is why if you're seriously looking at buying this vehicle, take a look at the premium. You'll be much happier and you're saving 10 grand. So guys, let me know what you think here about the Lexus NX. Would you choose the gas-powered version over the hybrid and plug-in hybrid? Let me know in the comment section below. But guys, once again, thanks for watching, take care, and I'll see you guys next time.